and welcome to Solar Insiders. My name is Sophie Vorat and I am the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid. And joining me again this week is Rachel Williamson, the lead reporter for the Renew Economy and contributor to our other sites, The Driven and One Step Off the Grid. How are you, Rachel?
I'm very well, Soph. How are you this hot day?
Yes, hot in Melbourne quotes.
No,
well,
hot. It's legit.
I mean, it is. It's 26. 26?
It feels hotter.
Yeah, it feels hotter. Feels like.
Well, we have literally come from snow.
We have had it.
So it could be 20 and we'd be like, hallelujah.
We've had a mad Melbourne week and damn it, we're going to discuss it in this podcast.
The energy news, stay for the weather chat.
That's right. And look, it is all about variable weather-related energy. So come on, it's important. But we have plenty of other really interesting things to discuss this week, including electricity price outlook, everyone's favourite topic. Some of the things that some of our big retailers are offering to new battery owners. And I have an interview with Dean Williamson, who is the head of Australia and New Zealand at GoodWe, which is a big player in the rooftop solar inverter and home battery market, which has a new home battery product. And yeah, it's always good to chat with people who are in amongst it. So we might kick off with the interview, listen to my chat with Dean, and then we'll come back and talk about all those other things. But first, here is Dean Williamson from GoodWe. Dean Williamson, welcome to Solar Insiders.
Thanks very much for having me.
Now, I thought we would start by getting you to tell us a little bit about GoodWe. I know it started in Australia in 2012, so it's been here for quite a long while. But what does GoodWe do? What does it sell? And what's its position in the Australian market?
So GoodWe, Australia was the first global market that we actually released products to outside of China. So we've been in the Australian market now for quite a while, coming up nearly 13 years, and predominantly we were selling inverters. That's really what the core of our business was. And then that...
You had, sorry to interrupt, but you had one of the first hybrid inverters, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like groundbreaking.
We were one of the first to launch a hybrid inverter into the Australian market, obviously well before, the battery boom came along. Yeah. And then it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, the company really tried to diversify, and rather than just offering one core component in a solar system, really trying to provide the full suite of solutions. So inverters, do batteries now, high voltage and low voltage, electric vehicle chargers. We also have a BIPV segment, so building integrated photovoltaics, and that
cool.
A lightweight panel for that. So we're not trying to really compete against traditional panels in the market. We're just trying to provide a solution for some of those niche commercial applications whereby, the EPC might come up against the roof and the structural integrity is not there. So rather than just saying, hey, sorry, we can't provide a 500 kilowatt system, you're going to end up with nothing. At least they've got an option to say, hey, we've got a lightweight panel. We can do it. We know that the cost is a little bit more, but it's also a lot more viable than just not putting PV there at all. So we've got the BIPV segment with those panels. We've got carport solutions as well, and a number of other products. And now we've also got heat pumps coming into the Australian market soon as well. So yeah, the company is certainly really diversified now, and I suppose the strategy is to try and provide that complete offering or that ecosystem for the customer.
Yeah, I mean, heat pumps are another booming market, not quite as booming as batteries at the moment. Getting up there. Yes. Now, speaking of batteries, you very recently launched your latest home battery offering into what is a red hot market, thanks to the federal rebate and, a whole lot of things coming together, but mostly the federal rebate. Talk us through your new battery and, and how it's coming into the market.
Yeah, the new battery is called the ESA, which is an all-in-one solution. Our R&D team, we're really working on this for the last 18 to 24 months. It really takes that long to bring out a new product into the market because, you need to do a lot of research. developing the product, testing the product, integrations, all these sorts of things. We knew that we wanted to bring an all-in-one into the market for a long time. I think it's probably the last 4 or 5 years that, we really had the feedback from installers saying, we think that the all-in-one solution, and when we say all-in-one, we mean the batteries and the inverter all in one stack.
Yeah.
And the market's been telling us that for a long time. So
it's sort of a plug and play.
It's a plug and play. Aesthetically, it probably looks a bit better. From an installation perspective, it's easier for the installers rather than having the separate inverter and the separate battery. The wiring's a little bit more complicated, and also it doesn't look as neat. So we knew we wanted that all-in-one solution. And then it was just about coming up with a solution that was the most installer-friendly option that we could think of. And then also, you want the performance really, really good. The commissioning has to be easy. So and the monitoring was really important for us as well. And so the ESA series, initially it's a single phase solution, 2 different battery sizes, 5 kilowatt hour and 8 kilowatt hour. We'll find that 90% of the batteries we sell will be the 8 kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
And then from the inverter perspective, everything from 3 to 10 kilowatts. And we've got multiple options in between there. And again, 90% of the inverters that we'll sell here will be the 10 kilowatt or 9.99 kilowatt. And then, the couple of redeemable features is that, 6 modules in one stack. So that allows you to put 48 kilowatt hours in one stack.
Right.
And in the next few weeks, we'll have that parallel option available. So if you want to put multiple stacks without the need of putting multiple inverters, but you'll also have the opportunity to put multiple inverters. And then just little things like we're really conscious of making it as easy as possible for the installer. Again, we think the installer really drives the market, and we try to listen to them as much as possible. And, just a couple of little things like even the AC connectors that we have, pointing on a 45-degree angle back to the wall, which just allows the installers to get that cable hidden and tucked away inside that, behind that cover.
Yeah.
And, we know that in Australia in particular, the installers really care about how it looks for the end consumer. Yeah. And so, we're always trying to develop ways to make it easier and also neater for the installers.
And it's tricky, and it's a really good topic. I'll dive into that more in a second, but it's tricky because installers have a lot, very detailed and strict rules they have to follow with battery installations, which caused quite a stink, when it all came out. I think probably everyone's wrapped their minds around it now, and, it's all in the name of safety. And I think Australia actually is gone to greater lengths than a lot of other countries around the world to make sure these are safe when they're installed in homes. But you're saying that it's important to think of the installer, and I think that's a really great point at the moment, because what we have heard from the Clean Energy Regulator, who oversees the battery rebate scheme, is that installers are under pressure at the moment. I mean, you guys are under pressure too, right? Manufacturers too. The huge demand this rebate has generated, which is 1,500 systems a day being registered, has kind of got the industry at its capacity, and having products that are easier to install for the workers out there, and that aren't counterintuitive and don't sort of work against them, is going to be really important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the industry really hasn't seen anything like this before. I remember back to 2010, 2011, when the first major rebates came into the solar industry, and the small string inverters and systems went through the roof. But this is obviously bigger again with the boom of storage. And I think, first of all, it was great that the government introduced this, just because standard solar systems have been able to sell themselves for a number of years just based on the return on investment. Even without rebates, I think organically they still would have sold. Batteries, the payback was still a little bit longer. Quite often you saw the payback, between 7 to 10 years. And I think it's not until you get close to that 5 years where you shift from the early adopters to really the mass market jumping on board. And I think the rebate did exactly that. And the rebate was so significant that anyone that was thinking about batteries, it became a no-brainer. And so it was really overnight when it just shifted the market on its head. And I know it flipped our business considerably within 24 hours. But one of the reasons was because our portfolio was so broad that we were offering so many different string inverters, so many hybrids, so many different products. What it did do, it consolidated our portfolio rapidly, whereby 5 or 6 products became 80 to 90% of our sales all overnight. And that was actually really a positive thing from our side of things. Market messaging became simpler, focusing on these products. Not saying we don't care about the other products, because they've definitely still got their place, but just being able to really focus on these. And then in terms of the supply chain, this was a huge thing, because nearly all of the manufacturers like ourselves, we source the cells from the top cell manufacturers in the world, and they became under considerable pressure to be able to supply more cells. And it wasn't just as easy as us saying, hey, we need 30,000 or 50,000 more cells. You've got other brands who are using these cells as well. And then we package them up within our own solution. And the 50 amp hour cells in particular, there were supply constraints. And what that meant for ourselves is we couldn't supply as many of these batteries to the market as we would have liked.
Yeah.
And that was with our stackable solution, the Lynx FG2. So then we were really lucky that the timing of our all-in-one solution came only 2 or 3 months after the battery rebate kicked in, because our supply of this new one is significant. We have huge supply of this coming in, whereby we're not relying on that same cell as previously, where we had a lot of constraints. And our production capacity is huge, well over 50,000 pieces a month if we can sell it. And so there were significant impacts to our business, and I'm sure a lot of other businesses. But overall, mostly positive, because not being able to keep up with the demand is a good problem to have. But by the same token, it's still a problem, because you want to be able to really service your customers, and especially those installers that have been loyal to you to us for so long. You really want to be able to supply them, provide them with what they need, because if they don't have supply, then they're obviously losing out on a lot of money and not keeping their customers happy. So there was probably 2 or 3 months of pain for the installers with supply, but over the last few weeks and moving forward, that's improved dramatically.
Yeah. And have you found that you've been working off your base of customers that you guys have already built up over this past nearly 13 years, or has it expanded that, exponentially? And also, a second question to that, what's the average size of battery that people are installing?
I think the average size battery prior to the rebate was probably somewhere between 10 to 15 kilowatt hours. And now that the battery rebate got introduced, we're seeing that above 20 kilowatt hours.
It's amazing.
The last I looked at was like 23, 24 kilowatt hours, it was really staggering. And I think the value of that rebate, helped the average size. And then, having the rebate up to 50 kilowatt hours certainly helped. I think there's some changes that will happen to the program that we can talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, from our point of view, having the ability to do 48 kilowatt hours in one stack was really important, especially because of that battery rebate. And then just other little things like, VPP programs. And at the moment, we're currently integrating with Amber VPP platform.
Cool.
It's taken us a while to get to this stage, but at the moment we're doing the beta testing, and hopefully, certainly before the end of the year, we should announce something to the market saying that we're fully compatible, which again, is important for our installers, because they want to be able to offer that to the consumer.
Yeah. I mean, it's been hugely popular, that one, as far as the BPP side of the rebate goes. And I think they've been slammed as well, just a huge amount of new customers. So when you say people are installing 20 kilowatt hours, does this mean that it's people already with solar and then they're adding to their solar system, or are they just oversizing their battery?
It's really a combination. It's first of all, it's new installs. So people that don't have solar at all, they're installing solar and batteries now. It's nearly a no-brainer to do both.
Yeah.
And then people that have existing solar systems are then adding panels, extra panels if they can, and then also adding batteries, to suit. I think, sometimes though you do see, some crazy ads going around from retailers whereby they're selling, really small inverters with really, really large batteries. I think for them just to be able to capitalize on the battery rebate, but for the homeowner, quite often it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm.
But I think for the most part, most of the retailers and the installers are doing the right thing by the end consumers.
Well, that's a good little segue for me, because another one of the issues, I guess, that has raised some concerns is safety. The regulator said that there's been a few, and they sounded like pretty minor issues, like stickers not being put on the right place and not being put on and that kind of thing, but important. And, a huge amount of batteries going out. It's obviously really important that the inspections keep up and that everyone's doing the right thing. And we've also had, and I won't name names, but there's been a product recall, which looks a little bit like it's more of an installer error than anything else, but a combination of things. How can you reassure? I mean, first of all, I'll say that considering the numbers that are going out and considering the small amount of issues we had, touch wood, so far, we're doing pretty well, and I think that's testament to all the regulations and things that are already in place, partly through all the state schemes. But how can you reassure as GoodWe customers that the batteries you're installing are safe, and that, because it's really important we don't let people's imaginations run off with one small problem, I guess.
Yeah, I think first of all, with the batteries that we're using, most of them in the market now will be using LFP, lithium iron phosphate. I think, batteries have evolved quite a bit over the last 5 to 10 years. LFP is now the most widely used, predominantly because it's more stable, safer. It works well. It works better in higher temperatures. So I think most of the battery manufacturers have adopted that. From our perspective, especially with the all-in-one solution, is that we've got 6 layers of protection. We've got aerosol fire protection. We've got thermal insulation. We've got the ability for monitoring faults, sending alerts to customers and installers. So there's really a lot that goes into the safety aspect of things, and probably the number one most important thing. So, we're really, really confident. I think the other manufacturer was more to do with their AC connector, on their inverter as opposed to the battery itself. But no manufacturer is immune to issues. That's for sure. I think it's probably just how everyone goes about dealing with those issues. And if we've ever had an issue in the past, our philosophy and our strategy is just to communicate that to the market as best as possible, keep everyone abreast of what's going on, and just look after those installers and homeowners, because at the end of the day, that's your livelihood. They're the guys that you want to keep loyal to your brand. And so, yeah. So as I said, when anyone deals with issues, it's not nice, but everyone does deal with issues from time to time, and it's just really how you handle those, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think in this case, it has been handled in that way. And, it's something that everyone's going to keep watching closely, including the regulator. And, be very interesting to see. But a lot of the products that are leading the installation rates are pretty well known and pretty well established products. I think the concern probably is, people coming in with, and as you say, not sizing things correctly. I mean, it's important, and I think this is a message a lot of installers have been saying, to size for the future, even just the near future. So if you are considering electrifying more things in your house, if you're going to get an EV. Those are the important considerations, right?
Yeah, I think people are future-proofing now. And like you said, people are looking that maybe they don't have an EV now, but they'll add one in the future. They would like to maybe use a bit more heating and cooling. They might add a pool pump or whatever. So people really are getting a battery, sizing it for the future, because right now there are those considerable rebates available. So I think if they're thinking of maybe in 1 or 2 years they might need more batteries, then they're probably just going bigger right now, because it really makes the economical sense.
Mm. And so in your mind, if you've got a solar and a battery system, and the inverter is obviously part of that, but what is the hero of the solar system? Like what to you is the part that you need to absolutely get right, and the other bits can.
I think it all matters. The battery, the inverter, the monitoring especially, but the inverter is especially important. It's effectively the brains of the operation. But as I said, they're all extremely important. The one thing that's going to be extremely important and valuable moving forward is the user interface, the monitoring, and I think the consumers are becoming more self-aware now. So the consumers really, not for the first time, but definitely more so in the last 6 to 12 months, they're becoming more knowledgeable about how to use their energy smarter. And so I think the ability to just make things really, really easy for the homeowner, not only to visualize what they're generating, what they're consuming, but how it all works is going to be really important, just for people to become more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And I think just little things that we're developing, I'm sure our competitors are probably developing as well, but AI is going to be really important. I think AI is going to be incredibly important, especially for the installers, because it's going to make their life a hell of a lot easier. An example for us is on the new all-in-one system and on our new monitoring portal that we have coming out in December. It's called the SEMS 2.0 portal, and it's a completely different user interface, and it's got integrated AI. The installer will be able to type in, pull up a Wi-Fi, how to connect to Wi-Fi, or they'll type in their serial number. Does this need a firmware update? Can I do a firmware update myself? Can it do it remotely? Can you pull up the specs, the manual? Just being able to access the marketing collateral is going to be so much easier. And we think that as this gets better and better, and we're training this AI at the moment in our headquarters constantly, and the better it gets, the easier it will become for the installer, potentially the less calls that we'll have coming through, because the installer can answer a lot of those without having to call up. And so I think that'll be a game changer for the installers and making it easier for them.
That's great. Just in time.
Yeah.
Now, commercial, we have not talked about that yet, and it's sort of a bit of an unsung component at the moment. Obviously, the federal rebates targeted households, although up to the 50 kilowatt hour mark, you can get some businesses in there. But commercial and industrial is this sector that has so much potential and is, I guess, probably underserved in Australia at the moment, and possibly because it's a lot more complex. Let's face it, there's a lot more bespoke solutions that are needed. What is your offering for the commercial and industrial market, and how's it been going for you guys? Are you feeling that there's some momentum from that just by association with the federal rebate?
Yeah, I think there is in that small commercial storage. There's definitely some momentum from the rebate. From our side of things, it's been a slow build over the last 24 months. We put a really, really strong emphasis on the C&I market 2 years ago. We developed solutions, and now we've got a really, really clean offering that we think is really competitive in the market. And it comes down to really 3 or 4 key products. One of them is just a string inverter, which is a 110 kilowatt string inverter. It's called the GT series. This one has, we've reduced the cost by probably 20 to 30%. We've fixed up a couple of things like the output current, just to make it easier for installers. So we've got that one in the country now.
Mhm.
And then we've got 3 key storage offerings, and they're all-in-one solutions.
Great.
So we've got a 30 kilowatt inverter with 60 kilowatt hours of battery. That one's really popular for the battery rebate, because obviously up to 50 kilowatt hours of those are claimable.
Yeah.
And then we've got 50 kilowatt inverter with 100 kilowatt hours of battery. And then we've got 125 kilowatt inverter with 261 kilowatt hours of battery. And as I said, these are all-in-one solutions. And we think they're going to be really, really important for us moving forward. And while some of the commercial retailers you'll speak to, they'll say that the last 12 months has been a little bit flat for them. We still see this as a hugely important market moving forward, especially the storage side of things. So for us, we started from a pretty low base, but we're starting to get some really good momentum now. And certainly next year, we think that's going to be incredibly important. Especially if you're way up some of the risks, with the residential battery rebate, that it's not going to last forever. It was slated to 2030. In a lot of people's minds, it's very unlikely to last to then. Certainly if you look at the numbers of how much it's costing, we're probably also anticipating that 50 kilowatt hour threshold gets brought down as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Is
that an industry-wide feeling?
I don't know if it's an industry-wide feeling. I know there's certainly quite a few people who feel that way. What I think is evident is that when they were planning for this rebate, they probably, first of all, didn't plan that the average size battery was going to be so high. And then when they made it up to 50 kilowatt hours, I think it's probably been a little bit hotter than what they were expecting. There's been more money spent, which on one side of things, great. But, my personal opinion, I don't think they're going to continue doing that forever.
No.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they try and pull a bit of heat out of that, out of the rebate, within the next sort of 6 to 12 months. And the only thing, I would hope for is that they just give everyone as much notice as possible, because from the manufacturers, from the installer side of things, there's a hell of a lot of planning that has to go in.
You don't want this roller coaster effect that we saw a bit in the solar market, where you're going from rags to riches to rags again.
That's right. And then you don't want to see a massive oversupply in the market either.
No.
But we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's been a fair bit of speculation, and I did ask some questions of the Federal Minister's Office on Friday, and I did not get a response as yet. So we will see. But I think it's to be fair, it's difficult always to predict these things and how well they'll go. I know that in Victoria, when they introduced the battery rebate here, everyone thought it was going to go great, and it didn't. Everyone was still very much focused on solar. And so, I mean, obviously it's quite a long time since then, and the dynamics have changed a lot. I think the disappearance of the tariff, the feed-in tariff for solar, has also been a big player in that, people aren't, if your solar's just sitting there in the middle of the day and no one's home, you're not getting anything out of that anymore, really.
No, that's right. And I think that's been a big driver, in the uptake of storage. And look, let's just say, for example, I don't know, 12, 24 months, let's just say for whatever reason, the battery rebate ends, storage is just going to become more and more viable, because the cost of the batteries are continuing to come down.
Yeah.
And you're not getting much to feed back into the grid. It's in everyone's best interest to try and be self-sufficient if they can. So I think storage is certainly here to stay. It's just that, I hope they give everyone enough time, because I did hear some whispers last week, actually, that the government was seriously considering making some considerable changes to this program. And I know that there's some within the industry that are advocating really, really strongly that if they do that, just give everyone enough time to plan for it. Yeah.
And it wouldn't hurt to tweak it insofar as if it was to make it more, boost the longevity of it and make it more sustainable, rather than being this big explosion in one period of time. That it, as you say, it has to be carefully considered, and with lots of consultation with industry, I would hope.
Yeah. I think if they did say, hey, look, there's, you've got, let's just say, for example, you've got another 6 months of this program. Actually, what that would do is it'd actually drive more demand, and everyone
Yes.
will be trying to get in the next 6 months. So it's
You're right. Yeah.
it's not easy to do it well, but I think you
Mm.
taper it down slowly over time. That's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, which has been what they've done with the solar, with the SRES. But this has definitely been a different beast. Now, we're going to finish up on a bit of a, I don't want to call it a lighter note because that seems to downplay it, but GoodWe has entered a partnership with Australia's, the Australian cricket team's wicketkeeper, a pair of very safe hands, Alex Carey. You're continuing a grand tradition in the solar industry of working with cricketers. I know that one of my all-time heroes, DK Lilly, did some solar advertising. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting move on your part, and he's seems like a lovely guy. And but for me, it's more about, I guess, it speaks volumes to me about where batteries have come, because it's a battery storage partnership, and it's basically, this is where we're at now, where we're but trying to speak to the masses about getting storage.
Yeah, it was funny how it came about. And you're right, it is nearly a bit of a cliche that so many of the cricketers have been aligned with solar companies, and that was probably the only negative, actually, I thought, when this opportunity came to us, is that I didn't want to just continue that sort of trend because everyone else had been doing it. But, it was too good of an opportunity not for us to take it on, because, from the outside looking in, Alex had all the attributes that we were looking for. His values really aligned with ours. He's an extremely respectful man. He's a good family man. And, when we caught up with him, myself, John, our marketing manager, and two of our sales guys, we met him down in Brisbane at a pub there. And, he could have just stayed for 10, 20 minutes and it was an opportunity, and then left. But he didn't. He stayed with us for hours, and he's the type of person that, he asks you, how are you going? How's your family? How's work? And he's just such a nice guy that, it became really a no-brainer for us. And since then he's been so generous with his time. Like, one day we were meant to do some shooting down in Adelaide, and it was for an hour, and he ended up staying for half a day. There was another time last week or the week before where we're running a national radio campaign over the Ashes Test cricket and also the Australian Open, and he went and did some audio recordings in there. And again, he just stayed, much longer than he really had to. So, we couldn't be more proud to have Alex as the brand ambassador. And we were probably looking for one for a couple of years, and we're really waiting till we saw one that had the same values as what we did. And it's fantastic that he really cares about climate change. And it's not just him. I know Pat Cummins is doing a little bit for climate change as well. And so it's really exciting to have him on board. And even little things like he gave us 5 signed Kookaburra bats.
Oh wow!
They didn't have to do that, and so we used those to basically auction them off for charity. We did a boat event some months ago, and we auctioned his bat, his gloves, and his jersey, where he made 100 overseas. And then one of our top retailers, told us that every year he donates $2,000 to kids at Christmas time that don't have the opportunity to get Christmas presents. And he said, if I donate $4,000, is GoodWe happy to chip in, or the cricket bat? And we said, absolutely. So we gave him a cricket bat. So we used the opportunity to see if we can make a small difference, because, as I said, he's just so generous with his time and everything.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I think, even if it is a cliche, I think it's a cliche we can embrace.
Yeah.
Even Mark Taylor doing the aircon, don't mind it.
Yeah.
all of these things are important, and all of them are better for our environment than other things. And it's important to find something that's going to get through, I guess, to people. And I know certainly as a kid, gosh, I was always watching the cricket and always it was always on. And yes, big fan myself. So yeah. I think and is the hope that you just will reach more people and get that message across that this is something that's becoming the norm now?
I think it is, and I mean the latest radio campaign that we've got with SEN was having Alex doing the voiceovers was a big thing, and then we tie that in with retailers. And then in the background, we're also creating like a find and installer tool so that when we do this consumer brand awareness, the people that are coming to us, we've got the ability to capture those and then filter out those leads to key retailers so that they can close the deal. And 5 years ago, if we had looked, it was really hard to create brand awareness. From any other brand that wasn't a household name.
Yeah.
But now, the battery market is so hot. There's so many people putting in your batteries and your inverters that, we're starting to do a lot of consumer awareness campaigns, trying to drive the demand from the consumer level. And whilst that's really important and then we've got a bunch of cinema ads that are going out next week as well. But whilst that's really important, we still strongly believe the installers are driving the market. And so we do focus a lot on the installers because, in my personal opinion, 99% of the time when the installer goes to the consumer they might say, hey, I want this brand, X, Y, and Z, but 99% of the time, the consumer will trust the installer. And if the installer is really adamant about the product that they're pushing forward, I think 9 times out of 10 that they can convince the consumer. So that's why we do focus a lot of time on making our product as easy and flexible for the installers. But by the same token, we are still trying to create that pull through from an end.
Yeah. If they've actually heard about it somewhere else, it might resonate a bit more if they go,
yeah,
oh yeah, that was that brand Alex Gary's talking about.
Yeah, that's smart.
And if you could just have a word to him and get him to do his bit to make the test last a bit longer, that would be great.
That would be nice, but at least we won.
Yeah, at least we won.
Yeah.
That's very satisfying. Well, Dean, it's been fantastic to have you on Solar Insiders. It's always great to hear from someone who's got their finger right on the pulse of the market and, is in there doing the hard work. I can hear your alerts going off like crazy. And your tasks are building up. I can see them. So thank you so much for your time and all the best.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
That was Dean Williamson from GoodWe. And as I said earlier, it's very good to talk to someone who's in the midst of everything and feeling the madness of the battery rebate and all of that. And yes, very, very busy man. He was looking a little bit panicky towards the end of our interview with all of the jobs piling up leading up to Christmas, which is when I think this part of the year is often a big uptick in installs.
Well, that's classic home renovator. Don't do. Yeah, don't try and get something on your house just before Christmas. But that's when everyone wants to do it.
I know, but I think isn't that what we all say to ourselves this time of the year for everything? It's like, it's not going to be mad this year. I'm not going to try and do everything. And then suddenly everything starts happening and before you know it, it's Christmas Eve and you're having a nervous breakdown. Or is that just me?
I leave everything to my mum or my mother-in-law. So I'm pretty chill, really.
Yeah, you're back off to New Zealand for Christmas?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, how nice. That'll be lovely.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me, Rachel, about electricity prices. Is Susan Lee right? Are they going up because of renewables? What's going on?
Well, in the AEMC, the Australian Energy Market Commission, in their letter to Susan, that's how it's reading.
Memo.
Their memo. No.
No.
electricity prices are due to come down.
Good one.
Projected, not forecast, projected to come down over the next 5 years thanks to more renewable energy generation in the system. However, if we don't start hurrying up with the wind and transmission, what it also says is from 2030 to 2035, prices will go up by 13% because we'll have to rely more on we'll have to rely more on gas generation. And that is going to push up prices.
Which has been going up and up and up.
Exactly. It also says that if it warns against keeping coal in the system because it specifically says that will push prices up by 5% purely due to outages. So what it's very explicitly saying, build more renewables faster. In fact, that was the headline of the report. Build more renewables and transmission faster, and you bring down prices.
And to be clear, this is not a renewables lobby or anything. This is the Australian Energy Market Rulemaker just using, and it's a detailed report, some 60-odd pages, I think, isn't it?
There are two reports. I'm partway through the first one.
Okay.
Many pages. But there was an interesting detail that they also included, and that is these price rises, which it's almost expecting from 2030 to 2035, can be almost completely wiped out by home electrification. And so it says if homeowners want to take matters into their own hands and get off gas, get off petrol, then those price rises, even factoring in the upfront cost of buying the equipment that they need, will be leveled out by the electrification of their home. So it's a kind of a two-pronged thing. It is asking regulators and planners and developers to really get cracking and speed things up. But at the same time saying, homeowners, you're not a passive entity in this story. If you want to do something about your energy bill, you can.
Yeah, and essentially keep doing what you're doing because this is where everyone's headed. And that's a nice segue for me to talk about Origin Energy because they sort of came out, I think last week, it might have been, and said that at the rate the battery uptake is going, that the funding could be exhausted by halfway through next year, which it sort of checks out. I'm going to take my glasses off as the sun is shining in my eyeballs. And that they predict that by 2030, 1 million Australian households will have fully electrified, which doesn't sound like that much. But when I looked into it, the number of households there are and then the number of households that are connected to gas of some sort, including, if they're using bottled gas, it is actually quite a lot. It's a big proportion of the households. And so obviously this is happening and people are making this decision already, which is great to see. And kind of, which it does mean that to an extent they're disconnecting from all of the political, I want to say mumbo jumbo that we have
debate.
Seen.
So in debate, informed or not, but it's debate.
Since the coalition launched its energy vision. And this constant sort of one side saying that renewables are bringing prices down and one side saying no, they're driving them up.
People are listening to, they're looking at their bills and they're listening to what is being said about rebates, and they're taking all of that on board.
And electrification and hopefully energy efficiency as well, because that's another massive part of it. If you're not using the energy, then it's not affecting you. Newsflash. Doesn't matter if the gas price is high if you don't use any gas. So that's really interesting. But the other thing that Origin was doing this week was putting out a couple of new offers for its battery customers. And what I noticed is they're being very careful not to say virtual power plant, not to call them virtual power. They have a virtual power plant called Origin Loop, a product that is sort of the basis for their offering that they have now, but they've tweaked that, and they've basically got 3 now, where there's one which is totally hands off. It's your asset. We won't touch it. You do what you want with it, and we'll offer you this, and this if you want. And then the other 2 are sort of various degrees of, automated control and slightly more attractive offers. But, they really stress that they're non-subscription, which is really interesting, I thought, because I guess it's this feeling like it's you're less tethered to it or something. I don't know. And that, not VPPs. And when I asked them about it, they said, we're just kind of moving away from that terminology. And that makes sense because it hasn't been, has been become a little bit toxic. People are a bit sort of still, as you and I have written about, both of us before, it's not proving that popular. And I think people associate the idea of a VPP with basically handing over control of their precious and still pretty costly assets to a sector that has not necessarily earned the trust to take that control. So, yeah.
And there are enough stories out there of people who have tried retailer VPPs and been stung. And then that's all you need to say, actually, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take it.
Yeah. And look, I think it's to be applauded. I think there are more and more options out there now for VPPs. And I think it's still a work in progress. That's what a lot of the industry players are saying. And, this is what it will look like, I think, in the future, in the same way that there are a lot of different retail offers. There's going to be a lot of different offers for how people want to manage their batteries and how much help they want in optimizing them and that kind of thing. So, but I just thought it was quite interesting that they're moving away from that. And they're also using the term feed-in tariff, which for the battery, which is another interesting thing because it's sort of using that terminology that households are familiar with, and that fundamentally was a very positive thing for a very long time. And so, that's part of what drove the extraordinary rooftop solar success in Australia was the fact that, even if you didn't self-consume, you could be off at work and your panels would be generating power and selling it back to the grid and making you some money that would kind of offset your use later. But that is now eroded away almost entirely just because of the way things are going. So it's like they're now talking about feed-in tariffs for the battery, which, to me makes perfect sense, It's more about, well, we want you to feed it in, but we want you to only feed it in at the time that it's right, and then we will reward you handsomely. So, yeah, I don't know whether that's interesting to the average person or just me. But I thought
one for the nerds.
One for the nerds. But I just think it's always interesting to see what big legacy players like Origin are doing, and bearing in mind too that they bought Solar Quotes, so they've got all of this intel, and which is probably informing these decisions. So it is, I think, quite interesting to watch them at the moment because they'll have a lot of very honest feedback and very honest data to draw from, and they have a huge rooftop solar base because they were one of the biggest retailers of it for ages. So yeah, it's interesting to watch and to see, who is joining what. The other VPP news that I found exciting was in WA, where a new build housing development in a Perth suburb.
Yes, that's right.
Is being built. 55 homes off the plan. They're selling them as standard with solar, with a battery, and joined up to a VPP with Placo, which I think is, again, really interesting, really innovative. Won't be for everyone, but, I think great. It's great to see Stockland, a big housing developer taking this initiative. I mean, to my mind, it should be happening everywhere with every housing developer, and it's crazy that it's not, but at least it is. And you know, obviously they're doing it because it's a selling point. You know, they're not doing it because, you know, it's not like, here, have a wholemeal sandwich that doesn't taste as good, but it's better for you. This is the good stuff. You get this and you have a house with much lower bills, and you have that from the get-go when you're instantly having to pay probably a really big mortgage.
Isn't it interesting how the addition of a battery was the spur for that? And it hasn't been that in developments solar has been standard.
No, it is really,
even though rooftop solar has been so popular in Australia for it's 2012
at least,
yeah, more than a decade, and it took batteries for a developer to go, oh, this is it. This I can say this now.
I mean, there are some developers that were doing that, and they were doing either just solar or solar with batteries, but it was very much a that's, you know, there's going to be 5 houses with that on it, and it's going to be a premium offering, and you'll pay a premium for it. But what's exciting about this is just the standard, and you know, if that's what people are going to be getting used to, having a house, and you know, in the same way you have a laundry and a whatever else, you have solar and you have a battery. So yeah, it's happening and coming, and you know, WA is that interesting state because it's got the stacked rebates where it is mandatory for you to join a VPP if you want to get the state one as well. So yes, it's still a very interesting test case, and I imagine that it was partly the reason why these two companies did that too, because they would have had the benefit of the rebate.
Yeah.
In there. But it just goes to show, you offer a few sweeteners and things start to happen, Rachel.
Yes. That is right.
Now I think that we'll wrap it up for this week. And yes, I think we've probably got, one more Solar Insiders in us for the year, which is crazy to think of. So we will stave up all of our scintillating chit chat for that.
Witty weather banter
for our
what's it going to be next?
Yeah. Hell, 100-kilometre-an-hour winds. Who knows?
It could be. We live in Melbourne. It could be either of these things.
That's right. But until we see you then, thank you very much for listening. Be sure to go and see our other podcasts, listen to our other podcasts, and watch them indeed on Renew Economy and The Driven. And we will see you in a couple of weeks' time. Bye for now.